Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Keith Pascal. Today we will be talking about installing the CMS UI for Universal CMDB. The documentation is available on the OpenText documentation portal. Note the keyword latest to load the documentation for the latest version. Let's spend a moment and talk about the CMS Product Architecture. The UCMDB server itself contains all the logic for the components of UCMDB. The Universal Discovery Probe is where normalization rules are processed, and it has its own Postgres database. The UCMDB admin UI is also known as the local client. And the part we'll be talking about today is the CMS UI, which is where items are consumed and the UCMDB browser itself is installed. Let's talk about the server requirements. Always check the documentation for the version that you're installing. This can be reached via the OpenText documentation portal. Note the keyword latest in the URL. We'll be talking about three types of deployment: small, standard, and enterprise. We'll start with the CPU. The small deployment is 1 or 2 cores, standard is 2 or 4 cores, and enterprise is 4 or 8 or more cores. The number preceding the slash is the minimum requirements, but based on your use case, you may need to allocate additional resources to the web server. Memory, 4 or 8 gigabytes for a small deployment. Standard deployment is 8 or 16 gigabytes, and an enterprise deployment is 16 or up to 32 gigabytes. The memory swap file is the same for all deployments, as is the free hard disk space and the display capabilities. A typical deployment, that being a deployment which has a single application server supported by a single database, is typically used in development or in test environments. The CMS UI connects to the UCMDB application server via HTTPS on port 8443 typically, and UCMDB speaks to its database via JDBC. For a high availability deployment, this includes 2 or more UCMDB servers connected through a load balancer, which allows for a redundant architecture. 1 or more CMS UI servers may connect via HTTPS through a load balancer to the UCMDB server cluster, which then in turn connects to its database cluster via JDBC. Users typically connect via HTTPS through a load balancer to the CMS UI. There are several installation modes for the CMS UI. You may install the CMS UI on an existing Tomcat server, that being Tomcat 8.5.33 or 9 as of this recording. The file names are listed below it. You may also install the CMS UI with pre-configured Tomcat on Windows, with the file name also showing below. You can install the CMS UI with a pre-configured Apache Tomcat on Linux. You can install the CMS UI with a pre-configured Apache Tomcat on Linux as a non-root user, and you can install the CMS UI on a Wildfly application server versions 15 through 26. Additionally, you can upgrade the CMS UI on Tomcat to the latest version. There is some data that you need to have before you install the CMS UI. Note the protocol that UCMDB is using. This is typically HTTPS. The UCMDB server hostname or virtual IP address, the UCMDB port number, the UCMDB context root, the UCMDB credentials, that being the credentials that the CMS UI will use to connect to the UCMDB server. And always be mindful of security, that being physical security, that being directory security, and CA signed certificate type security. The installation workflow is similar for all installations. First, ensure that the prerequisites are met. Next, extract the version of CMS UI that is required for your environment. Optionally, install Tomcat or Wildfly. Then configure the CMS UI and validate the accessibility. In future videos, we will demonstrate installing the CMS UI on a pre-configured Tomcat, on an existing Tomcat, and on Wildfly. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.